people vote.
Couldn't resist. We're reconvening at 7:05. Welcome, everybody. Can we? I'd like to start with all board members are present. Everyone's here. Mr. Novel, will you do the pledge of allegiance?
Salute.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Novel. I'd like to start with the report on actions from closed session. Appointment of high school principal. Mr. Freitas motioned, Mr. Heberly second, and Enrique Avalos was approved effective for the 22-23 school year by the following vote 7-0 and assigned to Tokay High School. Appointment of high school principal Sherry Lujan. Assistant principal. Mr. Nava motioned, Mr. Knackstead seconded. The board approved with a vote of 7-0. She will be assigned to a high school for the assistant principal will be assigned to a high school for the 22-23 school year. An appointment of a high school assistant principal, Robert Winterhalter, was put before the board. Mr. Knackstead motioned, Mr. Neely second. The board approved 7-0 the appointment of Mr. Winterhalter as a high school assistant principal effective for the 22-23 school year. And that's all I have for closed session. I'm going to move on to moments of silence. It was with great sadness that we share the news of the passing on June 9th of Brian Guzman, student at the structured program of Lodi High School. Brian, who had just turned 20 in March, is remembered as being polite, thoughtful, and who was liked by all. Please join us in extending our condolences to the Guzman family and staff and students of the structured program, and the staff of the special education department who assisted Brian throughout his educational career at Lodi Unified. Thank you. It should be becoming too common in our board meetings. We have a recognition. Is our presenter here? Excellent. Present. Come on up to the microphone. Board member Joe Novel will receive the keys to the city of Stockton presented by Geraldo Garcia, the planning commissioner. Mr. Nava, who do you know? Pretty impressive.
Pleasure. Absolutely. Is this thing on? Okay.
Yes, it is.
Unfortunately, Councilman Joe Brack could not be here today. He's in the middle of a city council meeting as we speak, so he sent me. I'm Gerardo Garcia. That leaves me with the honor of presenting you, Joe, in recognition of your dedication and service to the city of Stockton and in appreciation of your leadership that you've presented. I have the honor of presenting you as a Stocktonian of the Year, this key to the city, on behalf of Councilman Joe Brack and the city of Stockton.
This is quite an honor. Actually, I've been in Stockton for 60 years. And this is the top, okay, for me as a citizen of Stockton. I want to thank the mayor, Kevin Lincoln, Joe Brack, and the rest of the city council people for having the confidence in me to be selected to get the key to the city of Stockton. What an honor. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Well served.
Congratulations.
Wait, there's more. Mr. Garcia.
Yes, sir.
President Burrow.
Go ahead, you started it, you're ready to go.
Well, I'd just like to say that I think my fingerprints are on this award. Mr. Nava was unable to attend the State of the City speech for the Port of Stockton. And he asked me to receive the key from Councilmember Joel Brack and Mayor Lincoln. And I got to tell you guys, one,
Very cool.
talk about a great honor that I was thought of and asked to do this. And it really was something else. But also, the mayor, Councilmember Joel Brack, yourself, could not have picked a more deserving recipient. Mr. Nava's dedication to his community, his years of teaching, his commitment to the board are absolutely outstanding. I think I've lost track, but this is what now your 5th Hall of Fame that he is a member of, and every single organization that has him has always benefited from it. So thank you for recognizing my friend. Thank you for recognizing our colleague. He's an outstanding individual, and I don't think you could have made a better choice. Thank you.
I concur, absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Frederick. Any
Thank
other,
you, Mr. Freitas. Thank you. Thank you.
any other board members?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we could be here all night talking about it.
Oh, wait, Ms. Garcia.
But we've been,
Ms. Garcia?
You don't get to leave yet. You got 6 more.
All right, sure.
you don't have to stay and listen to us.
But please be sure to thank Councilmember Joel Brack for us.
I will, absolutely.
Joe I mean, the work that he's done here for Lodi Unified, he is one of the most unselfish people that I've ever met. And just an inspiration this whole time. Even though you didn't vote for me for president that first time. Well, thank you for everything you've done. And I think that recognition is just outstanding. It's just excellent. And thank the city of Stockton for recognizing one of
It's our pleasure.
Any other board? Thank you, Joe. I mean, I haven't worked with you as long as some of the people on this board. They've been here longer than I have. And that's nothing personal.
Well,
I just want to just say thank you. You're a steady force on this board, a voice of reason, and I think you've done that all over Stockton. So thank you.
Thank you.
I was just gonna say, not bad, Joe, for an old athletic director. Proud of you, man.
Thank you.
Great. Wow, this is hard to come back from that. So we're going to move on to public comments. Do we have sheets? Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. For anybody who's here, we have a 20-minute time period set aside for public comments to address the board on items not listed on the agenda. Each public speaker, thank you. Each public speaker shall limit his or her comments to 3 minutes. The board cannot engage in dialogue about public comments because of restrictions placed by the California Brown Act. Solid green will flash. It will be solid for 1 to 2 minutes. When it flashes green, you have 1 minute left. When it turns orange, you have 30 seconds. When it's red and it beeps, your time is up. And if you have any additional comments or if you can't get through whatever you need to tell us, you're more than willing to send us an email, a phone call, whatever works for you. Mr. Johnson, you're up. Welcome.
Well, thank you. Good evening, members of the board and Dr. Washer. I'm here to talk about the decision to exile Mr. Sandstrom to Bear Creek High School. It's fascinating that, and I'm super glad, congratulations, Mr. Nava, for being rewarded for your tireless dedication. I only wish that Mr. Sandstrom would have been afforded the same kind of recognition. He's one of the hardest working, dedicated, even keel, professional, bleeds purple and gold for Tokay. He's one of the smartest people I've ever been around, best boss ever. And I think the decision to send him to Bear Creek is the wrong decision, and I'm begging you to reconsider. I know the party line is that he might be able to make the situation at Bear Creek a little bit better, but I believe that this is punitive. I believe it's punishment. I believe it's a professional death sentence. I think there's a professional vendetta that's being satisfied. And what is this crime? Asking too many questions, advocating for his staff, advocating for his students. speaking truth to power. He spent virtually his whole career at Tokay, classroom teacher, coach, assistant principal, vice principal, principal for 19 years. Moving him from his beloved Tokay within just a few years of his retirement is mean-spirited, in my opinion, and cruel. I just don't know how anybody can treat valued employees this way. But ultimately, it's not about Mr. Sandstrom. It's not about the devastated staff at Tokay. It's not about any LUSD leadership. I think the ultimate question that we all as educators have to ask is, what is best for kids? What is the right thing to do for kids? This is not the right thing to do for kids. I don't think this is gonna tremendously help Bear Creek. It's an absolute catastrophe for Tokay, and I urge you in the strongest possible terms to show some moral courage, some true leadership, and do the right thing, and reinstate Mr. Sandstrom to the place where he belongs, and he should retire at Tokay. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Moving on to superintendent's report.
Thank you, members of the board. Madam President, we have some pictures to show you, I believe, from the Got Kids Science Day Camp. It was featured on Fox 40 News. Hopefully you got a chance to see that. A 3-day camp for 60 kids, grades 4 through 6. Still in its beginning stages. We've done it before, but didn't do it, of course, during the COVID time. Here's some happy kids, happy science campers. They had all types of activities related to science, centered around Lodi Lake. Some of them had never been to Lodi Lake before. Some of them had never experienced these science experiences. One of the neat elements of this is that these are children from various schools across the district, Lodi, Stockton, and our county areas, all coming together, making new friends, new connections, children that they would not have maybe met before had it not been for this. Also, they get a chance to interact with some new caring adults. Not only our staff, there were 3 Lodi Unified teachers on board to supervise, plus the Lodi Lake docents, WOW Museum, other science experts delivering the lessons. Thank you so much to Nutrition Services for making sure that they had their lunch and plenty of water. Thank you, transportation. We did provide some transportation for students. I believe there were over 200 students who wanted in this program, whose parents wanted in this program, and unfortunately could only accommodate 60, but hopefully next year we'll be able to expand. So thank you to our community for supporting Got Kids. Thank you to Michael David Foundation for supporting this particular activity and event, and hopefully it'll get bigger and better in the future. Also want to point out that, as you recall, last board meeting, there were a couple issues that came up as concern. I want to make sure that you know that we are well aware of that, well aware of your expectations, and that we are working on those issues. One, the high school restrooms, the state of high school restrooms. You heard from one school in particular. Unfortunately, that's not isolated to one high school. There have been issues this year at several of our high schools with restrooms. Seems to have been just a tremendous amount of vandalism by students of the restrooms, and unfortunately even at the new ones at Lodi High School. Very hard to determine who actually was responsible. Of course, if that is determined, action is taken. But this is a case where situation where often it is unknown. Really unfortunate because it impacts fellow students. And really creates grief among the community. Some of the things that happen are not only the fixtures, soap dispensers, towel dispensers, those kinds of things which can be replaced, maybe not shut down a bathroom, but when panels are destroyed, it becomes unsafe for students. When other things are destroyed, the actual toilets are destroyed, becomes unusable. Those are times when unfortunately they have to be closed for a period of time before they can be repaired. We are doing an assessment and we'll have that done, and M&O with Mr. Khan will make sure that we do as much as possible before school starts to get those in shape and make an extra effort to keep them fully stocked throughout the year. But please know that we are working on that issue. I know it is of concern. The other issue that came up was our elementary music teachers and the shortage. We know that our instrumental program is vital. It just makes a difference for a lot of kids. It prepares kids for the middle school and high school programs, and we don't want to see that go by the wayside at all. Hopefully that this is a temporary thing until we can get some other things figured out. I want you to know that we do have some strategies in mind. We are working hard over the summer to come up with some other avenues to make sure that we can provide as much as possible. Certainly cannot guarantee that every instrumental program at the elementary will be back in place, but we certainly will do the very best that we can. We know that that is important. Want to make sure that you know that that is an elementary issue and it's related to the prep time. It is not, we are not eliminating music in our middle or high school programs. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Dr. Washer. Moving on to consent agenda A, routine business. Does anyone from the board have anything they want pulled? A1. Anyone from the public need any consent agenda A items pulled?
Madam President, I move we approve the rest of routine agenda A.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Nava, for the motion, and thank you, Mr. Neely, for the second. Any board comments? Any public comments? Move to vote. Consent agenda A 2 through 16 is approved 7-0. Item A1, Mr. Heberly.
Thank you. The contract list, my question is in regards to number 4, and the person responsible is Dr. Sully. So my question to this is that it's a after-school math intervention, and I noticed the schools that are listed, and the schools that are listed, are they solely Title I schools that qualify for this grant?
Yes, those are, thank you, President McFarland, members of the board, Dr. Washer, those are Title I sites.
Okay. As we all know, there are a lot of Title I students at non-Title I schools. So my question is can this be expanded to include the other schools, or is it designated state or federal money just specifically for Title I?
For this particular contract that is designated for Title I, we do have other efforts for tutoring after school at all of our sites. The Bridge program is one. The other one is actually the one right above it. That is actually a tutoring program that occurs during the day. Was an AmeriCorps program previously, or it is still. But the other sites are served through the ELO and ESSER funding, and we select or offer to staff who wish to tutor after school the opportunity to do so at the non-Title I sites as well.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that it can be expanded with either this money or other monies, because if one school site has a need, chances are other sites have needs too. So, and you're obviously well aware of that. I just wanted to see if this was defined just for time.
This contract is.
Okay, thank you, appreciate your time.
Thank you, Dr. Sully. Do I have a motion? Wait, oh, I'm sorry, it's you. Thank you for stopping me. I don't know what I was looking at.
Dr. Washington, member of the board. So my question again is to Dr. Solly. So for both items 3 and 4, so they're going through private contractors. So does that mean that Lodi Unified teachers are not going to be involved in this and doing the tutoring, or the tutors are coming from outside the district? That was my main question. And if they are, or we have plenty of great teachers who can tutor in these capacities.
Thank you. Do we have a motion and a
Move to approve.
I'll second.
Mr. Neely motion, Mr. Heberly second? Call for the vote. Motion passes 6-1 with one opposed, Mr. Porter. Moving on to consent agenda B, student discipline cases.
Move to approve.
Move to-
Second.
Mr. Neely motion, Mr. Nava second. Do we have any board comments? Any public comments? Call for the vote. Agenda item, consent agenda item B1 passes 7-0. Moving on to consent agenda, I'm sorry, to action items. OA1, Dr. Washer. It's that kind of day.
That's okay. President Conley, members of the board, we have some logos for you. This is to continue the process of the rebranding. Chelsea Von Geer is here if you have any questions about process.
Quick comment.
Here you go.
These are really first class. You guys did a great job on it. I'm very, very impressed. So keep up the good work on that. Dad, I'm gonna move to approve this.
Second.
Mr. Neely moves. Any other board comments? Well, I have one. I like them all. The only one that I kind of go, huh, is Elkhorn's. All the rest of them make sense. I liked it. It's a wonderful logo, but that is our only freestanding gate school, and I felt that there was nothing that said gate about it to me. So that was my only, I did not like it. I thought it was a wonderful logo. I just like something a little more personal on some of those specialty ones, but that's just my opinion. No other board comments, any public comments? Call for the vote. OAI 1 passes 7-0. Moving on to OAI 2, local control and accountability, Dr. Saleh.
Thank you, President McFarland, members of the board, and Dr. Washer. This is the local accountability plan annually presented. No changes since the last meeting, and we look forward for your approval. Any questions?
Move to approve.
Second.
Mr. Connect said motion, Mr. Nava seconds. Any comments from the board? Any comments from the public? Call for the vote.
I remember the first LCAP we passed.
Yeah.
Things have progressed so much since then.
And it passes 7-0 as we're on memory lane. OAI 3, Dr. Khan, Mr. Khan.
Thank you, President Farrell and members of the board, Dr. Washer. I'll introduce Director 3, Andres, our Director of Budgets. I would like to preface the budget presentation by saying yet again in another year, this isn't the real budget. This has been constructed on the current law, which does not include 6.56% COLA, which does not include adjustments to Prop 98. Once Governor signs that into law, we will return in July with a 45-day revision. Without further ado, I'll name the senator.
Hello, good evening, President McFarland, members of the board, Dr. Washer. If we could please pull up the executive summary, so I'll jump right in. It looks to be a very rosy budget, from the state, a lot of good news. So let's see, with that said, last year the 10% reserve cap was triggered, so we are presenting that as part of the adoption tonight. Let's see, and then, and we'll cover that in the PowerPoint when we get to it. So as part of that, as a formality, we are recommending a commitment of the 64 million that you see, and then 193,464. So what we have in COLAs, 6.56 this year, 5.38 next year, 4.02. What's not included, because it's not yet effective law, is the 2.1 billion that the governor proposed. He still has to work that out with the legislature. That would, to calculate that to a percentage, that would be an additional 3.33 to that COLA, to the 6.56. That's not included. There's a lot of legislative proposals for ABA. Because it's not current, we have to use current law. That's the recommendation from the county. But there is the rolling 3-year average, which would be extremely helpful to Lodi. And then another proposal would impact this year. It's again not reflected in the budget, but it would use our 1920 ADA to enrollment yield on our 21-22 enrollment. So, what are we at? Like the low 80s right now on ADA to enrollment yield. We would be using the yield from 1920, and that's more in the mid 90s. So it's also like additional more good news, but we have to wait for it to all be official. Let's see. So STRS is increasing to 19.10. In the subsequent budget year, then it's going to be flat, and then we also have PERS increasing for the next few years. Okay, so what we have also included at adoption is unfunding of FTEs. So when we say unfunding of FTEs, these are positions that are in the budget, but there's no one currently, employed in that position. So it's taking up budget room. So we did 25, we used the average 3-year of unfunded and so we unfunded the budgeted FTEs. And we only looked at the unrestricted resources, because restricted resources, think of like your Title I, your special ed, they have to live within their budget allocation. So we have 25 teacher FTE and 38 CSEA FTE. So that bottom line on that has been removed from, we can only do this year by year. So for the 22-23 year, we have removed from the working budget the 5.9 million number on the screen.
If I may, I'll talk briefly about 2 of the items in this report, and also 2 items that were addressed by Director Anderson in the executive summary. The first is the commitment. This is not something that the board normally incurs in its adopted budget period, but with the 10% cap on our unrestricted funds, we have to meet 10% reserve levels, including our Fund 01 and including Fund 17, which this board does not run a Fund 17. What happens if we don't miss, or if we don't make that 10% cap? The most likely path forward would be a conditional budget approval from San Joaquin Co., who is this board's AB 1200 oversight. That conditional would be accompanied by a nasty letter stating that this fault in your budget would need to be addressed, and it would also give a hard die-on date that the board would have to adjust its budget back to a 10% cap, or it would in fact have an unapproved budget going into the next year. The solution is a commitment. This is slightly different than an assignment in that the board is resolving via the resolution on the item tonight. The board would be resolving to set aside the equivalent amount of your cash burn over the 3 years, given these budget projections, which, as stated before, doesn't include the Prop 98 income or anything outside of what is current law. Does this commit the board to spending it? It does, but the commitment is really to spend on this particular item, that 64 million. What happens if the 64 million deficit does not come to pass? Is the board committed to spending that regardless? No, it is not. But if there is money left over after these 3 years, and the board wants to do something with it, the board would have to formally resolve to undo the commitment and release the funds. The second thing I'd like to discuss is the STRS and PERS rates. As is traditional with California state budgets, they giveth, and then they taketh a little away. So effectively, these stirs and pers increases reduce your COLAs by approximately 1.64% per year. And that is in Director 3 Andres's PowerPoint slide if the board would like us to go through that. But if not, we'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Board, any questions? Comments?
I gotta tell you, you guys are incredible. It is so hard to do. I remember before I got on the board, I poured through the budgets on my own trying to figure it out, and it was tough. And then to come up, and you've got all this, and I understand that the budget that the legislature sent to the governor is different than what he wanted. So we've got an issue there as well. So we don't know what's going on. We don't know anything about any of this. And you guys produce a 3-year budget out of that. Now, that's incredible, and you've explained the limitations to us. So thank you so much for everything that you put into this. It's a well put together document. I've checked things out. I understand it, and I appreciate your work on this, and I will definitely be voting to support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Neely. Any other board questions? Oh, Mr. Nolan.
Well, I just want to commend the people that are doing this job. I agree with George. The only complaint that I do is that letterhead. I don't know anything about load. I think it's Lodi Unified, isn't it? On top, a load.
We changed it.
Oh, you
We
change?
changed our name.
Oh, we changed the logo to load.
I didn't even notice that.
Good job, great job.
Thank you, Mr. Nava. Would you like to comment on our road budget?
No, I'm good. I do have a couple of questions on the budget. On the, let's see, which one was that? Because we had several documents. One that is the proposed budget, 22-23. It's not the executive summary. It was talking about average teacher staffing. I'll just make it real easy. Does this budget in any way, shape, or form change our current assigned staffing levels, teacher-student ratio?
The budget before the board tonight, no, sir.
Okay. The other concern I have is unfunding positions. I understand that it's not a staff reduction move, it's a budget move. So that, even if those are, let's say, unfunded, and we find out that, oh my gosh, we need X number of positions, we can fill those positions. We're not hamstrung by the budget, because the budget is not a constraint, it is a guideline. Is that kind of where we're headed?
You still have plenty of open funded positions to fill if you wish. However, if board member Heberly is referring about the ones that we're actually unfunded,
Yes.
then those PCNs, the position control numbers, would have to be represented to board via changes to adopted budget, which you see once a month, and the board would have to approve the funding of those positions again.
And they would just come in that budget adjustment report that we get basically every meeting.
Changes to adopted budget is the
Changes to
title of that
adopted.
item, yes, sir.
Okay. I just, I'm a class size matters person, and I want to make sure that we're not handcuffing ourselves or increasing class size.
Understood.
And I'm hearing and seeing nodding, but I want to make sure we're not raising class sizes.
Michael, can you click on that, that one item? It's 22-23 proposed budget presentation.
Yeah. That
And we'll go to slide 11 of 14.
Nope.
Yep. So the purpose of the unfunding is completely financial. the board will see on this slide, and the community will see 4 years of ending fund balance projections. Clearly, the fourth is unacceptable. This would put the board into at least qualified status going into next budget year. So that is the purpose of unfunding. It will buy the board more time to adjust its balance sheet in terms of where it's spending money. But the cause of this primarily is lower enrollment. And right now we're projecting more of the same. On top of that, for the first time in well over a decade, the economic foundation that we've all lived on for 12 years now is beginning to change seriously as well. So that is the purpose of unfunding these positions, is to just try and get the board one more positive certification with which to make long-term decisions.
Sorry, I'm skeptical. That's why I'm asking the questions. And I think they're hopefully important enough to some people that it needs to be discussed openly. This same slide right here, I did have a question. On the 22-23 bars, are those numbers then with the 64 million moved over to the committee?
Yes. So the commitment is what's paying for the differential between the black and the blue.
Okay.
That is your reserve that is being burned off as you see the blue bars drop.
So on the 22-23, I see the beginning fund balance, $109 million.
Projected, yes, almost 110.
Okay. So then we take off the 64 and we're left with the 68 at this point.
You drop about $40+ million in that year.
Okay.
In excess spend.
I just wanted to ask if that was included, if the 64 million was included in that.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Let's see. I got the other ones answered. Those were kind of my main sticking points, was the class size, the unfunding of the positions, because we all know that we need CSEA positions also. And that was, it just sounds to me really bad. So that's why I'm asking. And then I'm still having a hard time with the 64 million. I get it that we have to comply with the 10%. So the money has to be either spent or it has to go into this committed fund.
That's correct.
Okay. Now, tell me how difficult it is on this committed fund if we need to access that money.
The board would have to wait till the next regular board meeting and resolve to undo either all or a portion of the commitment.
Okay, we could say, oh my gosh, we need 12 million of that. That money is there and available, and all we have to do is approve it at an open session meeting, and then that money is now available. Is that?
Through resolution, yes, sir.
Sure.
And that's general fund money, right?
This is
General, it's all general.
This is all
Just-
general
I just
fund.
want to
Yeah.
make sure.
Yeah. Okay, I have to tell you, the first I read that, I went, oh, I don't think so. I'm not approving this. Since then, in the last week, I've gotten a lot of questions answered. It still really makes me nervous. It's like that $64 million is somehow like a shell game with the state. Granted, they make edicts and then we all have to adjust to them because they're really good at that. And I just want to make sure that that money is accessible for the needs of the district when they arise.
I think probably the way I envision a commitment mentally is it's the same as one of your assignments. It's just wrapped up in a resolution. And like any resolution, the board can unresolve it through open session action item vote. So it's a little more stringent to get at the money, but it's still your money, it's still available, as long as it's not being used to cover the cash burn.
And I guess the thing that seems kind of odd is the state is saying, you can't have over this amount of reserve. Well, unless you put it in that fund. I mean, what are they accomplishing? It kind of falls short, it's like, it makes no sense.
Last week, the board approved the EPA, the annual EPA statement. That's resource 1400. That's the same money you use to pay staff out as 0097. But you have to say you're paying them out of this, just so that you can prove that you're not paying any administrators with that money. So is it a shell game? I would absolutely concur that it is. It's a contrivance, but it is a very legal contrivance, and once the board resolves it, the money gets locked up for that purpose until such point that it's gone, or until such point that the board alters the resolution.
How long can that money stay in that committed fund?
You've got resolutions right now going back decades.
Okay. Who knows? That may be their next
Well,
thing is.
it's up to the board, to how long they want to leave it.
Well, I just didn't know if there was a state requirement that said, yeah, you can put in this committed fund, but you've got 3 years suspended or something.
No.
Okay.
But it could happen at some point that the 10% cap is no longer viable, and then the board could easily unresolve this and put it back into assignment.
Got it. Okay, I'll hold it for
I like that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Heberly. Public comments.
While she's coming up.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, just while she's coming up. You know, I thank you for this, but it's just what really kills me is seeing the STRS and the PERS increases without, you know, the state's not really giving us money for this, but they're expecting us to cover increases, and I mean, I get STRS, so I appreciate that, but this is I don't know. There's nothing we can do about it. It's just whining.
Just wait till the 2% raise in October.
Yeah, that 2%. Yeah, that's a big one.
Go ahead. Okay, thank you.
Can you move this up to slide 11, I believe?
This is slide 11.
Or, I'm sorry, it's slide 11? Okay, that's not what mine says on here. Okay, mine says it's 4. Go up to the slide that says average teacher staffing. There we go. Okay, so I keep hearing about declining enrollment, but if you look at the students projected for 22, 23, 24, 25, it does go down, but not by a huge amount. I mean, it's not like the sky is falling, we're going to lose, even 10% of our students in your projection over that time. So, and I'm looking at teacher FTEs, and we just defunded 25, right? Teacher FTEs. And then the student-teacher ratio, that to me is very, very skewed because we know there are certain classes, like special ed classes, special day classes, things like that, where we're mandated a certain ratio, but when you go to, say, secondary, then it's very common to have full and over full class sizes. So this is a little bit wonky to me. But just going back, it's like, we're saying that the sky is falling, and I am not seeing a huge dip in your projected amount of students. So I'm having a problem correlating that with money that we're going to get from the state per FTE, and then these projections. And then what also scares me is, this is just me being, going through board meetings from the last year. I have an informal head count of, we've got 150 open positions, but we're gonna fund 25? I don't know. There's more that are resigning tonight. I know personally that next week we're gonna have more teachers resigning. I don't know. It just doesn't seem to make sense to me. Thanks.
Thank you. Oh, one more coming. Can you please state your name? That's the most fun I've had all night.
So glad. Good evening. My name is Michael Heberly. Thank you for having me, Dr. Washer, Sue McFarland, or President McFarland, and members of the board. I do have actually just a clarifying question. I know that under certain parts of the meeting, I'm able to pass out things. Is that something that I can do during this juncture? Okay. I just wanted to double check that I'm not violating any protocols.
Thank you.
Thanks, Michael.
And since the printer was acting up, I did not print myself a copy. And I am actually quite good on Excel, but apparently when it comes time to print, I'm not so good.
I'll share your difference.
Oh, I have it up here actually. Okay, good. Yep, I've got it. And mine's color coded. Because apparently I can't print in color. So the reason I'm here tonight is this is an actual response to something that was brought up at the meeting last week under this section. And unfortunately, I was under the weather with influenza last week. So what I have, what is in front of you is a comparison analysis for all of the districts around us, total compensation packages. And so that's what I have for you this evening. And as we go through and look at budgeting, right, and we look forward as to how we're going to recruit, retain, and so on and so forth, what exactly these numbers mean. Basically, you'll see that there's a column on the right and a section on the left, if you will. And I'd be happy to email this to you because it is much prettier in color. I didn't know if it was even possible to get it on one of these things, but I put it on a flash drive, you never know. But we'll just roll with it. Anyway, last week, I had heard that, there was some questions as far as what we're looking at when we're doing a comparison between ourselves and other districts. And I think that, sorry? Okay. And I think it's important that we kind of look at these as we kind of gauge ourselves on how we compare. And we try to do as honest of a comparison as possible. It's really hard once you get into the health and welfare benefits, especially in places such as Sac City, where they don't actually have a health cap. So how do you calculate that? It was tough. I'll be honest, we did the best we could by looking at averages, because basically in Sac City, you pay nothing for medical. It doesn't matter if your medical costs $600 or $3,000. So that's the range. Your medical in Sac City could cost the district $600 or $3,000. So what we did is we took we just basically averaged it out as though it was going to be equal and applied that across the board. Is it perfect? Absolutely not. Does it give you kind of a relative idea as to what you could expect? Yes, it does. And so that's kind of what I wanted to take a moment and kind of look at. And then on the very last page, and like I said, this is just something for your consideration as you're looking for budgets. If you go to the very, very last page, this is a kind of like a cell marker, which does look much prettier in color, I'll admit that. And what it does is it looks at some key places. A1, that's our beginning teachers. D10, we like to use D10 for things, so I figured that would be a good marker. And F25, that's the top of our scale. And so that last page is basically a snapshot of all of those things. And then you kind of can take an average from there and make a percentage out of it. And so that's something that our team had kind of put together to show you as we look forward into budgeting for next year, as we look at things like, okay, so we're going to prove this as COLA as we're projecting and things. And I think that this is important information to look at as we're budgeting for the next couple of years. So I know it's a lot. I'm not expecting everyone to be going through the entire document this evening. It was more of something that I'm hoping to open a dialogue. I actually do plan to present it if there, I wasn't on my email last week for SBAC, so I do apologize for that. But if there is, I do plan to share these numbers there as well, because I think it's, as Mr. Khan has actually always said, I appreciate, is that you have to start with an open, honest dialogue, and if you can't start there, you're not going to solve any problems. So just as an FYI, I do plan to share this at that juncture as well. So.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Hey, Mr. Everett, could you make sure to email that, because these old eyes are having a tough time with some of
My
these
gosh,
small-
I'll tell you what, I messed around with the printing margins multiple times, and I sat there, looked at this, I'm like, man, this is the best I can do with my time constraints. So I will be happy to email this to you.
I'm a spreadsheet guy too, I totally.
Yeah,
totally get
I will get this to you digitally. I'll go ahead and send that, and then that way you can kind of look at the numbers, and it actually also will have my calculations in there as well, so you can kind of see my line of thinking as I'm going through stuff. Because I do know that some of the color codes and also some of the things, like for example, in Elk Grove, I have some stuff in red to make calculations, which won't make sense on your copy because the color wouldn't print, so there'd be a little blank line there.
Cool.
But for the most part, the gist of it's all there.
I would really appreciate a copy of the spreadsheet as well, so I can kind of.
Oh yeah, I'll give you the whole document. You can even mess around with it and plug in your own stuff, all that.
Perfect, and thank you, this is a lot of work. I know I've done stuff like this as well, and this is a lot of work.
It was an unbelievable amount of work, yeah, so thank you.
Thank you for doing that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We're finished. If there are any more questions, be happy
Any
to.
additional
Madam Chairman?
Sorry.
I got hands going.
Okay. Yes, on the, when we figure the student-teacher ratio, we include teachers on special assignment as teachers in that ratio, is that correct?
I believe it's all the 11.
It's going to be everyone. So this includes all the teachers, including those on special assignment, correct?
Okay, does it also include RSP?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I kind of, that's, historically, it's been like that since I can remember. And what it does then, it skews the reality, especially in secondary, so just that.
How much does it skew the reality? Is it possible for you to take a look at that sometime?
We've done reports to the board on RSP teachers before on their own individual caseload numbers. October 2017 is burned in my brain for that. And so, but there's work done there, but there are also other skews that affect that, in that we are our own CELPA. So we're providing a lot of the service. When you start getting, and I don't know if this is the case with RSP. I do know for the SDCs and the lower incidences, there aren't teacher FTEs in our competing districts in this county in their budgets, because those FTEs exist in the CELPA. So, but I can check to see whether or not their RSPs are provided by CELPA.
Yeah, I'm with Mr. Herbert. I've heard the same thing since I've been on here. It'd just be nice to know. I mean, well, we got 33 coaches or something around that area?
32, I thought.
Something like that, yeah. And then we've got a few extra of the RSPs, so if we can get kind of an idea of how that works out, that'd be great. Right.
And you can just email that, is that acceptable? Okay.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have two questions.
Sure, go ahead, Mr. Porter.
First of all, could you break this down for us, middle school up to high school versus K through 6? On the student-teacher ratio? And then please remove all the coaches and non-instructional for me, because I know that they get more ADA for their buck in 7th through 12th.
Ninth.
Class size. I'd just like to see what we're doing at the secondary. I've been involved in classes where we've had 44 and 45, so.
And would you like that emailed to you?
Oh,
too?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. In fact, Mr. Hebley's daughter was in one of my classes with 44.
Madam Chairman, I move we approve this budget.
Second.
Mr. Nava has motioned and Mr. Neely has second, and now Mr. Freitas, would you like to make a comment?
I don't know, this moment's kind of lost.
When I mentioned that several months ago, I was told that's normal protocol, so yes.
Mr. Khan, Director Andrus, great job as usual. $400 million, huh? Gone are the days where we have those puny little budgets of $250 million. But
She's here now, so,
this is fantastic. This is money that we're going to spend in our district. This is money that we're going to spend on our kids. And once again, you've made it very complex simple. So thank you for this wonderful report, and I will be supporting this item.
Great. Any more board questions? Any more public questions? Do you have anything else you need from us?
we do not. Thank you, President Carl.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second, calling for a vote. I've got to get to the right place. There I am. And OAI 3 passes 7-0. Thank you very much. OAI 4, Mr. McKilligan.
Madam President, we have another one of these exemptions we're requesting board approval for.
Thank you very much. Board, any? Mr. Neely motions, Mr.
Question.
Porter seconds, and Mr. Heatherly has a question.
Mr. McKilligan, so these have to come to us as an individual basis, everybody that comes into this?
STAR's requirement cannot bring it to a consent agenda, must be an action item, each one on its own.
All right, I kind of thought that's the way it was from what you were saying the last time we had one of these, so thank you.
Thank you very much. Any additional comments from the board? Any public comments? Move to vote. OAI passes 7-0. Personnel matters, Mr. McKilligan.
Madam President, routine personnel matters are presented for your consideration.
Thank you, Mr. McKilligan. Any board comments?
Move to approve.
Second.
Mr. Neely motions, Mr. Nava seconds, and public comment.
Dr. Washer, members of the board. Again, on this document, we have 10 teachers that are leaving. Last week, we had 26. I know there's more coming. Last week, Stockton Unified had a recruiting event where they hired 20 teachers. I don't know how many of them switched over from Lodi yet, but they hired 20 teachers, and I know some of them, at least, are Lodi teachers because they talked to me. What are we doing as far as trying to recruit teachers for these open positions? Thank you.
I noticed Mike McGilligan's name's on here.
Yes.
And I appreciate you giving us a year's notice so we can prepare for your happy retirement. And your service, of course, been very much valued. Appreciated by everybody here at the board and within our school district.
Thank you, Mr. Porter.
And I would join Mr. Porter. I'm sure this is first of many accolades, but you have been the head of personnel the entire time I've been on the board, and I've greatly enjoyed working with you, and I appreciate all you've done.
He ain't gone yet.
Mr. McKilligan, while I teased you a little bit in closed session, I understand we all have to do our retirement at some point. You will be missed in a year from now, so until we get there, can we terminate you for a little bit longer? Look at him, he won't even break. I know you want one more year of negotiations, don't you? He's still smiling. Move to vote. We have a first and a second. Mr. Neely motion, Mr. Nava seconded. And it passes 7-0. Moving on to report items. Dr. Sully.
Thank you, President McFarland, members of the board, Dr. Washer. Annually with our LCAP, there's a requirement for us to report on what's called the federal addendum. and it is provided to inform the board of actions we are taking with the categorical funds or Title I, II, III, and IV to supplement our LCAP actions and activities. If there are any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Any questions from the board?
This is routine?
Yes.
Okay.
Any public questions? Do you have everything you need from us? Okay,
This will return next week for action.
great, thank you.
Next item.
And you're still here.
Still here. Mr. Dahman, Mr. Dahman's going to come up and do a brief presentation. We also are required to provide a report to the board annually of what are called the local priority indicators. It's what's found on our California dashboard, which has been suspended but will be coming back. And Mr. Dahman is our ARE coordinator. He's just going to provide some highlights of data that we've gleaned from the last year plus.
Nice to see you, Mr. Dahman.
Good evening,
Good,
President
I
Cole.
could hardly recognize you.
Hardly, no.
Understood.
Members of the board, Dr. Washer, thank you. So yes, we'll be reporting the local indicators. Next slide, please. So the local indicators are part of the LCFF 8 state priorities, which are broken into two, the local indicators and the state indicators. The local indicators are part of LCFF priorities 1, 2, 3, 6, and 7, and that's what we'll be presenting on. Next slide, please. The way these are reported are through a reflection tool, which is a survey on a scale from 1 to 5, 1 being exploration and 5 being the full implementation, and also narratives. Next slide, please. So with regard to priority 1, we have some highlights here. 95% of our teachers, this is for the 2020-21 school year, 95% of our teachers were appropriately assigned and fully credentialed. All facilities were reported to be in good repair. Sufficient textbooks and instructional materials were provided to each student. You'll notice there's a page number next to each one of these priorities that refers to the full report, the Word document that you have, so where there's far more detail if you want to get down into the weeds. For priority 2, all categories related to professional learning and instructional materials availability were rated as a 5. All categories related to identifying areas of instructional improvement, academic standards, engagement activities with administrators and teachers, those were rated as 4. For priority 3, related to parent engagement, all indicators regarding building relationships, partnerships, and seeking input and decision making were rated as 4. And for priority 6, which is the student climate, that came from the narrative. 88.1% of the students agreed or strongly agreed that they feel safe and engaged at school. Finally, with regard to priority 7, we focused on enrollment in the core academic subject areas for high school. There are a lot of points here. I won't go over all of them. Just hit the first point, and this is with reference to broad courses study. 94.3% of the students in grades 9 through 12 were enrolled in English. You can peruse the rest of those at a later time. Next slide, please. And then 95. And then, so this view here is the same thing, only we're approaching it from the aspect not of grades but of student groups. So, for example, 95.6% of the low-income students and 94.6% of our EL students and 91.4% of our specialized students in grades 9 through 12 were enrolled in English. And then the next slide. We are referring here to barriers and actions. So this is the last aspect to report on for priority 7. For barriers preventing access, this was very similar to last year, which is essentially for ELD courses are limiting enrollment in core academic courses for those students, and also parent awareness of district programs and college requirements is also an issue. And then revisions and decisions, again, these are just some highlights where the ongoing professional development that we're doing for ELD and college and career night. So with that, are there any questions?
Thank you. Board, any questions or concerns? Comments? Any comments from the public? That was too easy.
It was well explained.
Very well explained. Do you have anything else you need from us in order to move forward?
No, not at this time.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Just an observation, Madam President.
Yes.
In the last several meetings, we've had a lot of required reports, thousands of pages of work that are done by people in our district. And I always look at that and going, so who's reading all this stuff?
I am.
I mean, we send it in and they do what? So, just a rhetorical question, please don't give me an answer.
Mr. Bigger, welcome.
Good evening, President McFarland, members of the board, and Dr. Washer. Before you, hopefully you've had an opportunity to take a peek at the executive summary for the improvement student learning through the transcript audit process. I had the opportunity about halfway through this year to meet a gentleman by the name of Gil Compton. He works at the Riverside County Office of Education. Was invited to attend an actual transcript audit meeting at Poly High School in Riverside. Dr. Solly happened to be down at a iReady conference, I believe it was, in Pasadena, and was able to join me at Poly High School and sit through a day of Gil Compton working with a team of staff members from Poly High School. And it kind of opened our eyes to the work that they're doing and what is possible. I truly think this is an incredible opportunity for the secondary division in looking at how can we improve student achievement. And what Mr. Compton does with Riverside County, he's working with a number of districts throughout the state, and it's kind of catching on fire and spreading across the state based upon the work that he's doing, the results that he's seeing with his work. The idea is, if you can kind of look at the executive summary, hopefully I can speak to what's going on, but the bottom line is he's taking right now, we're in the process of getting him our students' 2022 student transcripts at both the high school level and the middle school level. His team will audit those transcripts, look at them, and basically he'll report to us in August. And we've laid kind of a calendar out. We met with him on, gosh, I believe it says in here, I believe it was June 6th. It was the first Monday after we were done with school. And he came and kind of gave an overview of the process with all of the secondary principals up in the third floor conference room. And it was really exciting for them, and I think it's really exciting for their schools, because what they're going to begin working on right now is assembling teams from their school. So it's not just an administrative process, it's a team process with the whole school. So principals will assemble groups of teachers, counselors, the registrar, possibly athletic directors, any staff members they feel that can bring a thoughtful, open mind to taking a look at the information he'll share based upon the information his team has gotten at looking at the transcripts, and basically share strengths and weaknesses of where are you succeeding, where are you falling short with different processes in your school. Just jumping ahead real quick, middle schools are going to be meeting on the week of August 15th, so we do have 5 comprehensive middle schools. Each middle school will spend one day of that week with him analyzing their transcripts. The high schools will follow up on the 22nd. Not quite sure yet if we'll go Monday through Thursday for the comprehensive high schools or Tuesday through Friday, but the 5th day of that week will be spent with our kind of alternative schools, such as Henderson, Middle College High School, Plaza Robles, Liberty High School. They'll meet collectively because we've got 10 days to work with him. So over those 10 days, that's how we're going to break it up and have the opportunity to work with them. But each school will have a group of team members to sit and kind of listen to the data, respond to questions, and kind of have questions posed to them to open their thought process. This is to begin to see how can we create more opportunities, better opportunities to increase student achievement at our schools. If you look at the third page, Lodi Unified is doing quite well as far as an overall graduation rate. Looking at 86% compared to 81% in San Joaquin County and 83% statewide. The A through G completion rate's a little bit different. We're a little lower there at 26%, with San Joaquin County tallying 34% and the state 52%. And basically, I mean, my hope is that each of the school's team members can look at just overall student achievement. It would be great for kids if we can increase our graduation rate even higher, and if we can increase our A through G completion rate as well, because all that's going to do is provide opportunity for our students to explore and experience as much as is possible for them. So for that reason, I'm really excited about that work. There are 7 project modules listed on page 4. We're starting the work in August. We'll begin with the first module. And basically, that's grade distribution that they're analyzing right now, or over the course of the next month or so, that they will share when they come to meet with us in August. And then the project components driving the work, hopefully that's self-explanatory. I mean, basically, they're going to challenge our groups to think, to take a look at data, and then what can you come up with as a group to address the needs that are kind of being pointed out by analyzing these transcripts at a very deep level. So in a nutshell, that's what's going on. I think the true work will kind of come to fruition when the teams get together. You know, what Lodi High School sees and what they're going to be doing is going to be different than what Tokay High School is doing, and what McNair High School is doing, and what Bear Creek High School is going to do. You're looking at, as you all know, every school is different. The student population is different. Courses, you know, are mostly the same, but maybe the approach is a little bit different. So what can we do at each school site to provide as much growth for students as possible? And that's going to be, you know, getting the team of staff members in the room and begin to really look what's going on. So that's going to be an exciting time in August, and I really look forward to seeing the work that they do and how they respond to the questions and the ideas that Gil will present to them. The project's funded. We've been given $2.4 million that came in through the A through G improvement grant through Robert's office that I believe Cindy Miller is working with, and the initial cost of this project is $63,000, which is just a little kind of drop in the bucket to that $2.4 million. But I think it really gives us the opportunity to look forward and try to create as much opportunity for our kids as possible, which I know everybody always talks about and is looking for the students in Lodi Unified. Any questions?
I have questions too. Go ahead.
Thank you, ma'am. Hey, Scott, thanks a lot for putting this together.
You bet.
Very, very much appreciate that. Talk to me about auditing the transcript. What does that mean? I mean, what are you looking at? Are you looking at trends for the school? Are you looking at individual students? What's the?
They're taking all of the transcripts from the senior class of 2022, and then the middle school kids too, and they're doing a deep dive, and they're going to look at everything. You know, what classes are students being successful in, what classes are students struggling at. You know, and then you're just going to be able to take a look at, maybe this is why this is happening, maybe this is why this is happening. You know, why are they successful in this area, and be able to bring the counselors into the mix, the teachers in the mix, and provide feedback as to why these things might be happening. And I think that's really an important and special part, getting everybody in the room. And when we were at Pauley High School in Riverside, we got a glimpse of how that work began to unfold, and the questions he asked, and the way the counselors were providing input, the way the teachers were providing input, and administrators too. But I really hope that the principals will get a broad spectrum that is well representative of the staff population, so those questions can be answered as best as possible. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, no, that actually gets it, because I think what you're looking at here is more systems
Mm-hmm.
than individuals, and I think that's fantastic, and it has to be done. I do want to bring up something that I would hope that we can eventually get to, And that's the issues that we have with individual students who fall far behind on the credits they need. Mr. Nava has been just a driving force on this. And we've got students that come to us, disciplinary cases, and I won't use any names, of course, but this has been going on for every year since I've been on the board. We'll see seniors come to us that have 15, 20 credits, 30 credits. By that time, yes, they're a discipline problem.
Right.
Because they're going to be, they've got no chance of graduating. So I'm looking for something. And at first look on this, I thought maybe there's a dovetail here.
And that's the hope, Mr. Neely. I mean, really, when you get down, you can begin to look, and that's why I wanted to bring it in. One of my first questions with him, can we bring the middle schools into the mix? What are we doing down there? How does that affect what's going on at the high school? When we had our meeting on the 6th, of course, Robert was kind enough to join us. I had extended an invitation to the county superintendent, Troy Brown. He was there. He was really excited about the work, and I think he would like to see us kind of be at the forefront of this effort and be an example for other districts to push that work, countywide. And then also, Mr. Young was able to join too and had some pertinent questions to ask. And I heard back from Gil later in the week, very excited to see that, geez, I wasn't expecting the county superintendent. I was excited to see that even at the elementary level, you're asking questions. So I think the work Susan and Neil are doing, how can we expand that? How can we understand what is going on based upon the questions that are asked and the information that is shared in the month of August? And where do we go from there? What are we going to do differently at the high schools? What are we going to do different in the middle schools? What can we add, upon what the elementary division is already doing to increase, the success as kids move through the ranks from, kindergarten up through the 12th grade?
All right. Well, thank you very much. I'm excited to see what this.
So am I. I think it's a great opportunity, and I hope we can, be the district in this area that kind of opens some eyes and not only provides opportunity for our students, but other districts as well, if the work proves to come to fruition and do what we hope it does.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
You bet.
Thank you, Mr. Any other question? Yes, Mr. Heller.
Thank you, Mr. McGregor. So when you're saying they're looking at the transcripts and they're trying to find where kids are successful in which courses, there have been pushes on and off for the last several years in that you're grading too hard. You're making your class too difficult. Even if it's an AP class. And my concern is, are they trying to lower the rigor? Or is this just an understanding of placing kids in the right place where they can be successful?
I think it's looking at everything. I mean, it's the whole great big picture, and what is a team going to come up with based upon the information that is shared. Certainly, is scheduling a part of the problem? Is course offerings a part of the problem? How the kids are faring in classes? What is causing them to be successful? Where they're struggling? What can we do as a school side to take a look at that information as it's presented to us and alter things that might, change might be considered? That was one of the 3 components, I believe. Sorry, I don't have it committed to memory, but that last one, improvement science. Taking a look at, what might be able to be changed. What can we try to see if that does make a difference? So I don't know if I answered your question, Mr. Kimberly. I think it's a very broad palette that we're going to look at and see what we can do to increase overall student achievement.
Right. Well, and interestingly enough, I was going to mention the same thing Mr. Neely did, is that you know, we get those discipline cases that come to us with, you know, 0.9 GPA or lack of credits, and they're an upperclassman. And one of the things that we were told by our counselors is that the program is a Naviance or something. And the reason for that is to catch it early enough so that we can direct the child into a path that is successful for them.
Sure.
And, you know, I certainly don't want to go back to the all-college prep model where we decided that, you know, kids all had to go to college and we dumped them in classes that they just were not ready for. And that was kind of one of the first things we saw on the board 12 years ago when I got on, is that we had tens of thousands of kids failing courses because they were misplaced. So if this is part of making sure that they find the path that's successful for them, that's great. If it's, oh, you gotta ease up on your grading and lower your rigor, I'm not in. So that's kind of a watch out for me, but we won't know until we get into it and look. And
Right.
we don't have a problem at least trying it and seeing where it takes us up to a point.
And I appreciate what, you know, you said and Mr. Neely referenced about, you know, the kids that are struggling with, you know, 30 credits, you know, they're a senior and, you know, what's gone wrong. And I think, you know, the work we're doing with MTSS, you know, across the district and the 3 different tiers of support that we're looking at trying to build, you know, at the elementary level and the, you know, all throughout the grade span to address, you know, where are kids crashing and burning and what can we do to make sure they're entering high school, you know, as prepared as possible to, you know, meet graduation requirements and also, you know, have as many people complete the A through J requirements as is possible so that, you know, they have doors that are open to them should they choose to travel through them.
And I do agree that, and I've been saying it for years, is that what you do in middle school, it does count. A lot of times it sets you up for success or not in high school. So.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Hurley. Mr. Porter.
Yeah, Mr. McGregor, I just a couple of items. I'm reading through your project models, which is number 4, I think, on your slide. A lot of this is teacher-driven, grading, essential standards for courses, a course syllabi, and I'm all for that. I'm all for that if you're teaching, you know, English, freshman English, that we should be established with some of the curricula and some of our grading standards, grade books and so forth. And I agree with Mr. Heverly that rigor should always be a part of what we're trying to do. But the one thing that's missing here is, which is essential, attendance. We're not looking at attendance.
These are, you know, and I'm anxious to see if that comes up through the analysis process. These are the 7 modules that Mr. Compton has focused on in his work throughout the state. Yeah, it's certainly something we can, you know, hit upon. I mean, I know it's often something that the board speaks of, and I know Dr. Dosti works with at CWA, as well as the school site principals, trying to figure out how do we address the students that are chronically absent. It is not specifically mentioned in any one of these 7 modules, you're correct. And I'm anxious to, again, see how this unfolds, and that's certainly something we can bring up to Mr. Compton to see if that's been something that has been addressed in any of the other schools he's worked with, and does this work actually affect attendance. I think, you know, from my experiences over the past 36 years, lots of times students choose not to come, you know, when school is hard, when there's not a connection. So again, looking back at the MTSS structure and what are we doing across the grade spans to make kids excited about coming to school and having to be able to experience success. I think if we can really focus on that, hopefully we'll see that could be a byproduct of or for, you know, decreasing chronic absenteeism.
But don't you see in these 7 models that it takes a whole lot of collaboration with teachers?
Oh, absolutely. And I think that's one of the things that that I was most drawn to and appreciative of. You know, he's got a cross-section of the school represented in the room. It's not one group of people that is making decisions for everybody. You're bringing, and he encouraged the principals, you know, bring in an excellent cross-section of your school. Give, you know, the folks that are always on the bandwagon and maybe some of the naysayers too, to get a full rounded input to what's going on so we can best answer these questions, understand the school and why things are working or are not working, so they can be properly addressed.
And my last question, when you said a deep dive, are you going to break this down by, I'm looking at the high school level, of course, because that's where I was, by each individual teacher? For that particular course?
I would assume that's where it's going to go. I haven't actually walked through the process, so I wouldn't be speaking the truth if I said this is exactly what's going to happen.
That'd be a big red flag, I can see that. But anyway, those are my comments. Thank you very much.
You bet.
Any other comments from board, Mr. Nava?
Yes, Scott, I just, when you finish this project of student learning through the transcript audit, I'd like to find out the results of what you accomplished by doing this. Okay, and I don't know whether that's by number, data, or I don't know. I just need to know, like I said, we have a lot of problems, and I don't think that the audits on the transcripts are going to bring these kids that are failing from the beginning of the 9th grade to 11th grade, and then they are expelled from school. And it's not going to bring that, I don't think. The thing that's going to do that is counselors approaching these troubled students at the beginning. It has nothing to do with your transcript audit, but that's what it has to do with the students to improve themselves or catch them early to get some remedial work or some type of intervention with them. But I'd like to see the results when you guys finish with this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nava. Any other questions from the board? I have one quick one. When I look at the 7 modules, what's the time frame that it will take to get through all 7?
That should be, it's, if the school chooses to go that direction, you know, I think the goal number 1 is to attack module number 1 as we approach August. Take a look at the transcripts and see that the work each school does with Gil and the progress that is made and where they choose to go from there. I mean, in our talking when we were down at Poly High School, you know, one of the things he said, you know, there are schools and districts that, you know, maybe start with 1 and then they go with 4, 5, and 6, you know, and they skip over 2 and 3. It kind of, I think, is a recipe for the school depending upon what needs come out of this very first, the first work with Module 1.
Thank you. I think we have a public comment behind you. Welcome again.
Welcome again, yes. Thank you for this opportunity, and I just wanted to say that Mr. Heverly and I'm just totally going blank on your name. Porter. Mr. Porter brought up some of the concerns that I have about possibly using this to single out a particular teacher. Teachers definitely should be involved in this, and I saw in the overview that they should be part of the team. But there are going to be courses where there's only one teacher who teaches that course. You know, particularly when you're looking at AP courses or honors courses, there's going to be only one teacher who teaches that course. So it could get to be very teacher specific, and I don't want this to be used as a tool to you know, tell that teacher that they have to alter their grading, they have to lower their rigor, just like Mr. Heverly said, especially when you're getting into some of these courses. My other concern is that when I saw the numbers, I was just shocked at how low our A to G, our high school A to G students are compared to the county and even the state. That was eye-opening. So besides looking at just perceptions on grading, you know, I think we need to look at what courses are we offering, okay, that are going to create that student engagement, And, you know, grading is one of those necessary evils. We have to show the student understands the work. We have to show, the student has to show that they understand the work and they're getting the standards, the essential standards that they talk about in the syllabi, which I completely agree with. But how do we do that? And maybe instead of, you know, maybe there's different ways that we could have teachers learn about different ways to grade, such as instead of having, you know, some sort of a standardized test, they can do project-based learning. And that will improve the engagement, improve those who want to be A to G, something like that. But I'm just really, really wary of this becoming a focus to, to be derogatory toward a particular teacher, especially if that teacher is, well, yeah, I mean, it wouldn't matter what subject, but yeah, I don't want it to be derogatory to a particular teacher and be used as a way to, I don't know if you want to say get them in line or something like that, you know, even possibly disciplinary procedures. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. Do you have everything you need?
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity, and there's nothing that I've experienced in any of my conversations or visit down at Poly High School that would indicate it's a gotcha looking to pick out anybody, but rather what can we do as a team to increase student achievement. That's what excited me, and I believe that's where he's coming from. I don't believe there's an effort to single anybody out and make anybody feel bad. What collectively can we do to help students?
Thank you, Mr.
Yep, thank you very much.
Mr. Khan.
Thank you, President Carlin, members of the board, Dr. Washer. With board and superintendent permission, I'd like to pull this report and return it at another time. Staff plans to alter the direction slightly on this.
Perfect.
Thank you. For the
No
next,
questions on, I have no questions.
For the next item.
Yes.
So this is, before the board is an initial reading of a proposed cybersecurity and data privacy policy. It is based on the Center for Internet Security's controls. The policy will cover things like data privacy, incident response, acceptable use, and security training for staff. Wholly absent in this item is a rule that will inform superintendent on how to administer the policy. The reason for that is the rule is going to be, will need to be aligned with the board's insurance policies on cybersecurity. To give you some idea what the status of that is, in February, April Wars, and your senior director and controller and I attended the NCR board meeting. We were told we would need to be able to create administrative regs, or what this board calls a board rule, across 12 different items for these 4 foundational items. 3 months later, we were down to 5. 1 month later, we were back up to 6. So the insurance community really doesn't have a good solid footing on this, but we do need this board policy for us to proceed with the work that April, the Director Juarez, Senior Director Juarez, and her 2 risk management staff, and also Director Holberg of Technology have engaged in this far. But I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Khan. Board, any questions? Any public comments? I assume this is coming back to us?
It will, yes.
Great, thank you very much. Mr. Young. Board policy 4112-2 or period 21.
Good evening, President McFarland, members of the board. Dr. Washer, before you this evening is a proposed revision to that board policy that you mentioned. And so I am seeking input regarding that, and we would bring this back next week for action.
Any questions from the board or comments? Any public comments or questions? Do you have everything you need to bring it back?
I do, thank you.
Thank you very much. We are at the point of employee group representative communications.
Okay. Okay, Dr. Washer, members of the board. I don't know. I don't know about you, but I haven't been able to start my summer. So, so I wanted to say that I went to 2 summer school sites yesterday. I went to Julia Morgan and I went to Bear Creek, and it was chaotic. There were many students and parents who did not get their assignments via email, and so what I saw were parents trying to figure out where their child was supposed to go, and some of them were even at the wrong site, and they were saying, well, I never got any notification. And I ended up helping the principal at Julia Morgan shuttle kids to the right rooms, because she just had all these kids who didn't know where they were supposed to be, and especially when they're really young, like they were at a new school, they didn't know who to talk to, so you're kind of getting down on their level and talking to them. But then I go to the high school, and oh my goodness, the lines out of the office for kids either trying to figure out where their assignment is, because they're again saying they didn't get an email, or trying to enroll in a course. It was chaotic. That's all I can say, and I felt badly for the students. And I also know that some of them were hoping to find a seat in a class where somebody had dropped. So that goes down to supply and demand. There was just obviously a disconnect between the demand for summer school and the supply of teachers. And I believe that Dr. Washer and the board needs to figure this out. Maybe we need to look at the structure of summer school. I think it needs an overhaul. It hasn't been overhauled in decades. Teacher compensation was definitely an issue this year. And if you want teachers to teach summer school, I saw 3 requests go out for high school this year, up until the last couple of weeks of school. Do you want to come teach high school? Do you want to come teach high school? And teachers were not biting. We got to figure out why. Okay, if there's a demand, we need to meet that demand. We need to have that supply up. And finally, I'm going to be the thorn in your side, continuing to ask the board on what is being done to recruit and retain teachers. We need to be innovative. I would love to work with you on finding ways to become innovative to retain the teachers that we have and make Lodi a desirable district. I know that other districts are getting, other districts are getting signing bonuses, they're giving retention bonuses, they're doing all sorts of things creatively. Because again, it comes down to supply and demand. Teachers are in high demand right now, and the supply is short. So we need to become innovative, and I'm hoping we can work together to do that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Comments from the board? Mr. Conexon.
Okay, maybe for Dr. Washer, I would like to find out what procedures that we all have in place for next year, in particular the high school, as far as their time schedule. I know we're starting an hour later, and so in particular, how are we planning on handling after-school activities like band, drama, and athletics, if there is a plan? So, and I'm sure there probably is, But I also think there's probably a lot of people in the public would like to know what's going on. And the second thing is, in light of recent events, I want to make sure that all of our schools are retold to double check on their security protocols. And just maybe say, yep, we did it, that type of stuff. But I know that's got to be an important issue for a lot of people right now. It is for me, and I'm sure a lot of parents. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Nexted.
Okay.
Mr. Neely.
Dr. Washington got kids science camp, excellent deal. And I do hope that we get a chance to expand that. You said Michael David was helping out with that, yeah?
Yes, the funding goes to that, yes.
They're funding how much?
Goes, I don't know how much, but a large portion of the funding is from their contribution.
Fantastic. That's great. That's great with those kids. That's a great place out there to have it. How are we coming on the hunt for our webmaster?
We have a webmaster.
We
That
have one.
position's been filled.
I was just looking through some of the website. I think we need to do a little updating on there. Not fun. Just take a look at that. One more thing I want to bring up. I brought this up before, and I'll bring it up several times. California is headed for this huge drought. I mean, we're in a huge drought. It's going to get worse. There are going to be regulations on it. We need to start this as soon as we can. We need to get M&O involved in this. How can we save water? How can we cut that down? There's a couple reasons, and not just cost. We need to be showing. We need to be leading the way. We need to be showing that we're responsible on this, and we're trying to help the community. So it's a big deal, and I'd like to know what we're going to do on it. And that's all I've got. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Neely. Mr. Porter.
Yeah, I attended one day of the science camp over at Lodi Lake, and I thought it was really impactful and inspiring for me to see these young kids who've never even seen a kayak before. And it was the coordination between the WOW and the Got Kids, and they had a Science Alliance that was there that day doing elephant toothpaste, which is just a blast, and how diapers work. It was pretty cool. I didn't know all that. I just knew to change them, and that was not a fun experience. But it was, for me, it was very inspiring. The kids were awesome. The teachers that were there were great, and the docents were wonderful. I really want to congratulate Dr. Washer for putting that together, and hopefully we can expand on that. Unfortunately, I showed up in flip-flops, board shorts, and a t-shirt, and I told everybody I was a board member. The next day, Mr. Freitas showed up in a Porsche, a suit and tie, and a news crew. And so they were more impressed with him than me. The sloppy board member versus the polished politician. So anyway, the kids got a better idea of what a board member actually is.
The difference between retired and non-retired.
There you go.
The difference between a hardworking and a politician.
Anybody else?
I enjoyed it, so thank you very much.
It's not how you dress, it's how you deliver.
Oh, there you go. In his
Right.
tie over there.
Porsche.
Yeah, they can't even pronounce it correctly. That's the problem. Mr. Harberly.
Well, there's a Gavin Key over there.
Yeah.
You're walking beside.
Well, you know, my thunder was stolen a little bit. I did want to say how much I appreciate the coordination between the different agencies for the Got Kids Summer Day Camp. It is just phenomenal, and I love the way that you pull in the docents, you get the WOW coming, and you've got all these other science groups, and just getting the kids outside, letting them experience something different. Wow, I mean, it really sparks them. So, you know me, I love science, but then outdoors is awesome too. So, accolades to that. And I just wanted to remind everybody with my American flag pen and pin, see that you have to enunciate correctly. It is Flag Day, so happy Flag Day, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harberly.
Thank you, President McFarland. I join all my colleagues in most of their comments. But Dr. Washer, thank you for recognizing Got Kids. I did make it to the last day. We had exciting events such as the dunk tank, which I did not participate in, did not get in. And we had,
Should have been fun to watch you.
it would have been very, very fun. We did have bottle rockets also, which were liter bottles that were pressurized and shot up in the air, and everyone had a blast with that. So if you are wondering how you can be part of this God Kids Fund, join the board, come to an activity, donate. So it is the world's greatest event, and all your help goes to great events like this and making new friends. Also, myself, Mr. Nava, and President McFarland were able to attend the County Office of Education Employee Awards Dinner. And many great CSE employees were recognized. Also, we had one of our own, that's Robert Winterhalter from Lodi High School. He represented the district as our Teacher of the Year, and he was in the final competition. Who was the winner? Everybody was the winner because they were all great individuals that represent their districts well and are doing a great job teaching our kids. So I was very happy that I was able to attend that. Thank you, County Office of Education, for putting that on. Oh, and congratulations again, my friend, the key to the city. Very well deserved.
Thank you very much.
Any other comments from board members? Well, since all my comments were taken, I was going to comment on the Employees of the Year dinner, but you got it, Mr. Freitas, so I'll let your words stand. Any comments from our superintendent?
No further comments, thank you.
No further comment. Well, I'll turn the page, make sure, any board advisory? Without that, I would like to adjourn at 8:50. I did. My goal. There you go.
Mr. Porter.
Shut up.